Hello. My name is Anika Veris, and 3 weeks ago, my own mother tried to have me declared mentally unfit so she could steal everything my grandfather left me. Yes, you heard that right. They forged documents, rewrote my past, and told the world I was crazy. But here's what they didn't expect. I'm still a licensed attorney. And I kept the receipts. I paused at the doorway, the scent of roasted rosemary chicken floating through the air mixed with the sharp sting of lemon polish. The Marcelli's dining room gleamed under the Sunday sun, gold-rimmed plates and cut crystal glasses lined perfectly as if this meal could erase years of silence. They were all there, my mother, Vera, radiant in her pearl set, my father, Horace, already refilling his wine, Celine, in a pastel dress that screamed innocence. For a brief second, I thought there would be a chair for me. I scanned the long table, every seat filled except one near the end. I moved toward it, clutching my purse like a shield. Vera's manicured hand flicked in a graceful motion toward Celine. "Sweetheart, you take that spot. You'll be near your father." Celine smiled, rising from her chatter with a cousin. She slid into the last chair before I could reach it. The scrape of wood against tile was soft, deliberate. No one said anything. So I stood. The laughter picked up again, seamless, as if I'd never entered. I swallowed air that felt thick. The sunlight glared off the silverware, too bright, almost cruel. There's always one person in every family photo who stands, I thought. I've always been her. I placed my hands on the back of a chair, careful not to grip too tightly. Horace lifted his glass. "To family," he said. His voice was smooth, authoritative. "To how far we've come." They toasted. Crystal rang. No one looked at me. The conversation drifted to Celine's charity event, her incredible grace under pressure. Vera brushed a crumb off Celine's shoulder, the gesture intimate, performative. I felt my heartbeat echo against the silence meant for me. When I tried to speak, my mother's laughter cut across mine, louder. "Darling," she said to Celine, "your grandfather would have adored your poise today. He always said you were the heartbeat of this family." The words lodged deep. Grandfather. The name itself was an open wound. I was there the day he died, outside the hospital room because they told me I would only make things harder. They had already decided who belonged beside his bed. The room blurred for a moment, faces blending with memories. I blinked, and I was standing again in the rain, outside the iron gates of St. Augustine Cemetery. Umbrellas bloomed like dark flowers. My name hadn't been printed in the obituary. The eulogy spoke of one granddaughter, Celine, the light of his later years. I had stood at the gate, soaked through, clutching lilies that wilted before the service even began. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased. Back in the present, the clinking of forks brought me back. Celine was opening a velvet box, a small gasp escaping her lips. "Oh, Mama," she said softly, "you kept it." Vera's smile was crafted with care. "Your grandfather's ring," she said. "He wanted his true heir to have it." I froze. The ring, a heavy gold band with an emerald center, had once slipped from his wrinkled fingers onto mine when I was 10. I remembered his words, "It will be yours someday, because you listen more than you speak." Now it gleamed on Celine's hand, catching the light as she waved her fingers. No one met my eyes. "You learn to stop asking for a seat," I whispered to myself, "when they teach you early that your voice is too loud for their version of love." Every word was a quiet theft. I stared at the family portrait hanging over the mantel, painted when I was 15. Even there, my face was half turned, the artist capturing the way I looked beyond them. Horace leaned back, content. "Everything looks perfect again," he said. "No more chaos." "Except the weather," Vera laughed. "Charleston's humidity ruins everything, skin, mood, hair." They laughed again. The same synchronized laughter they'd practiced all their lives. Celine turned toward me finally, her expression carefully composed. "Anika, you okay standing? There's a stool in the kitchen, if you'd like." Her voice was sweet honey layered over glass. "I'm fine," I said softly. My throat burned. The sound of cutlery filled the room again. Somewhere between the laughter and the silence, something inside me shifted. A small, clear voice, not angry, just done, rose quietly. They didn't notice when I placed my napkin on the table. "Leaving so soon?" my father asked without looking up. "Yes," I said. "Before dessert." Vera's smile didn't falter. "Always dramatic." I turned toward her, calm. "No, Mother. just final. The sunlight from the high windows flickered against the glass cabinets, scattering gold across the floor. For a moment, the air was still. Then I walked away. The sound of my heels on marble was steady, rhythmic, almost like applause. As I stepped outside, the cool air met my face. The scent of salt from the harbor cut through the heavy perfume of their house. I breathed, slowly, deeply, gently. Inside, I could still hear them toasting again, voices rising in perfect harmony. But for the first time, their laughter didn't reach me. She wasn't being cruel, I thought, as the door clicked shut behind me. Just final. Just like the signature they made me write once. The ride home was quiet, like the kind of silence that doesn't wait to be filled. I drove with the windows down, letting the wind do what my voice couldn't. There were no tears. Not because I wasn't hurting, because I'd learned that pain, in this family, was something you swallowed whole and digested slowly. By the time I reached my apartment, the sky had dimmed to that soft bruised color between gold and gray. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by the steady hum of the fridge and the faint lavender of an old candle I hadn't lit in weeks. I leaned against the door, breathing. Slowly. Deliberately. Like that was the only way to stay intact. On my coffee table sat a large brown envelope. No return address. No handwriting. Just the heavy kind of paper used for things meant to look official, even when they aren't. I knew what it was before I opened it. 10 years ago, my mother had called me home. That was the word she used. It's time, darling. Let's put the past behind us. It had been 4 years since we'd spoken. The last conversation ended with her hanging up mid-sentence. Back then, I thought silence was punishment. Now I understood it was protection, hers from guilt, mine from disappointment. When I arrived that day, the house looked the same but smelled different. Like lemon and deceit. Celine was in the kitchen, laughing about something. Horace barely looked up from his scotch. Vera smiled too brightly. "Anika," she said, voice stretched tight like a violin string. "You look tired. Working too hard?" "I'm managing," I said. She led me into the study, the room my grandfather once used for his chess games and handwritten letters. It had been redecorated since. No more cigar boxes. No more framed sketches of places he never visited but loved just the same. A white folder lay neatly on the desk. Next to it, a ceramic cup of tea, Earl Grey, steeped to that precise strength she knew I preferred. "It's just a formality," Vera said, brushing invisible lint from her lap. "Some trust documents. We're simplifying the estate for legal purposes. It clears confusion, that's all." Horace remained in the corner, swirling his glass. Not speaking. Just watching. Celine's laughter drifted in from the other room. It felt staged. Like background music piped into a waiting room where you're meant to calm down before bad news. I remember asking, "What exactly does this formality say?" Vera's smile didn't budge. "That you're not contesting anything. That you trust us to manage it fairly. You've always trusted me, haven't you?" My fingers had hovered over the pen. I hesitated, not because I doubted her words, but because something about the air felt too still. Too rehearsed. "You don't have to read it," she added. "It's all legal boilerplate. Standard for families with multiple beneficiaries." That word, beneficiaries, sounded foreign coming from her. Cold and precise. Like I wasn't her daughter, just an item on a spreadsheet. I signed. Quickly. Neatly. I didn't know that signature would become my silent resignation from everything I was supposed to inherit, not just money, but meaning. And when I handed the pen back, Vera kissed my cheek. "You've always been so reasonable," she said. Back in the present, I sat down and opened the envelope. The document inside was a copy. Clean. Crisp. With my signature at the bottom, still elegant, still mine. And yet, it didn't feel like mine anymore. I flipped through the pages. Legal language I now understood too well. Words like, voluntarily relinquish, irrevocable, without duress. Funny. I'd studied all of those in law school. What I hadn't studied was how a mother could engineer your disappearance using politeness and paper. The next drawer I opened wasn't locked, but it might as well have been. It held things I hadn't touched in years. Old birthday cards. Postcards never mailed. And then, a pale blue envelope, yellowed at the corners. My own handwriting. Mom, written in a slant I hadn't used since I was 27. I had written that letter the day after I signed the documents. After I realized something in me had shifted. It was an apology, I think. For being distant. For not understanding her sooner. For not being the daughter she expected. I never got a reply. Now I knew why. The envelope was still sealed. Untouched. Unwanted. I held it for a moment longer, then placed it on the edge of the kitchen sink. I lit a match from the box I used for candles and watched the edges curl inward. It burned quietly. No drama. No ceremony. Just release. I didn't cry. I folded the ashes into a napkin and threw them away. Afterward, I opened my laptop. Subject, Marcelli's Trust. To, Assistant at Chambers and Company Com. Message, please retrieve all archived documents regarding the Marcelli's Trust. I want full access. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time before hitting send. The cursor reminded me of a heartbeat, steady, small, insistent. This time, they'll have to read everything I write. The morning after I sent the email, I woke to sunlight crawling through the blinds, cutting neat stripes across the floor. My phone buzzed beside the bed, an invitation from my mother's assistant. Family meeting at the house, 6 p.m. planning for Celine's charity gala. Of course. A week after pretending to forget me, they wanted me in the same room again. I didn't answer, but I went. Some wounds needed witnesses. The drive to the Marcelli's estate was lined with magnolia trees, their leaves glinting in the late light. The gates opened as if they had never closed for me. The air smelled of honeysuckle and wealth, sweet, polished, suffocating. Inside, the living room looked staged for a magazine shoot. Crystal lamps. Velvet chairs. People I didn't recognize wearing pearls that belonged to old money and borrowed morality. My mother stood near the fireplace, commanding the room with a practiced smile. Celine sat beside her, glowing in blue silk, the color of a summer sky that never storms. Then I saw it, the necklace. A sapphire pendant, round and bright as a secret. My grandfather's gift. Once mine. It had been given to me on my 12th birthday. He placed it around my neck and said, "This stone holds patience and loyalty. Don't let anyone convince you to give it away." But here it was, resting perfectly on Celine's collarbone. "Anika," my mother exclaimed, voice warm but distant, the way one might greet a distant cousin at a wedding. "We were just talking about you." Her words drew glances from the women nearby, curious, polite, the kind of curiosity reserved for someone rumored to have problems. Celine rose, radiant and composed. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I," I said quietly. She laughed, that rehearsed, airy laugh. "Mother, we should get started before everyone leaves." Vera nodded. "Ladies, let's toast to Celine. To her grace, her compassion, and her devotion to keeping our family's name shining in Charleston." Glasses lifted. Applause followed. I stayed silent. Watching. Listening. Then one of the guests, an older cousin I hadn't seen in years, leaned toward me. "I thought you moved away for good, dear. California, wasn't it? You must miss the South." I smiled politely. "I never left. Just stopped being invited." Her lips parted, then closed again. She turned away, pretending to sip champagne. Vera continued, voice smooth as satin. "You know, when things were difficult, Celine stayed. She kept the family together. Not everyone can carry that kind of grace." There it was, the script. The rewrite of history performed with perfect rhythm. Every sentence built a new narrative, Celine, the loyal one. Me, the disappointment. I felt the old ache rise, but I didn't interrupt. I let them talk, weaving lies into a story they could live with. Each word layered over the truth like paint on cracked wood. They weren't just rewriting my story, I thought. They were casting Celine in my skin. Horace appeared from the hallway, still dignified, still holding authority like an inheritance. "Anika," he said, his voice careful. "You've been keeping busy, I hear. Still in law, right?" "Yes." He nodded, sipping his drink. "Good. That kind of work can make people cynical. Don't let it harden you." Cynical. The word hung between us like an accusation wrapped in advice. Across the room, Vera adjusted Celine's necklace, admiring how the sapphire caught the light. "It's almost like it was made for you," she said softly. Celine smiled. "It's perfect." I wondered if she knew the story behind that pendant. If she remembered watching me unwrap it from its velvet box. Or maybe she did remember, and that made it easier to wear. The women around them murmured approval. "Such a beautiful family," one said. "You must be so proud, Vera." "I am," my mother replied. "Both my daughters are extraordinary. One shines in the public eye, the other, well, she shines in her own way." The room laughed politely, as if it were a compliment. I stood by the window, looking out toward the garden. The same garden where my grandfather used to sit in the mornings, whittling small wooden birds for me. The last one he made, a robin, had vanished from my desk the week I left for college. I used to think maybe I misplaced it. Now I wasn't so sure. Celine walked over, glass in hand. "You're quiet," she said. "That's new." "I guess I finally learned when to stop talking," I said. She tilted her head. "Come on, don't be like that. This is supposed to be a good night." "For you," I said. "It's always a good night for you." Her smile didn't waver. "You could have stayed, you know. You left, not us." There it was again. The myth. The version of events that made them the victims and me the one who broke the chain. "I didn't leave," I said softly. "You all just stopped opening the door." For a second, her expression cracked, just a flicker, gone before anyone else could see. Vera's voice called from across the room. "Celine, darling, we need your input on the silent auction list." "Coming, Mom." She turned back to me. "Try to smile, okay? People are watching." "I know," I whispered. "They always are." As she walked away, I noticed how the necklace gleamed under the chandelier, how it caught the light like a tiny accusation. The conversation around me shifted to donations and guest lists. My name was barely mentioned, and when it was, it came with the tone of a cautionary tale. "Poor thing," someone whispered, "so much potential wasted." Another voice replied, "Not everyone is built for family life. Some people prefer solitude." I stood there, invisible, nodding to words meant to wound gently. If I screamed, they'd call me unstable. If I cried, they'd call me guilty. So I stayed quiet. Observed. Calculated. Every word they said, every lie they polished into truth, I collected them, one by one. Someday, I'd need them. When the meeting ended, Celine and Vera posed for a photographer. The flash lit the room in brief, blinding bursts. In the photo, Vera's hand rested lightly on Celine's shoulder, both women smiling as if peace had always lived here. I caught a glimpse of myself reflected in the mirror behind them. Standing slightly out of frame, my outline blurred by light. Maybe that was my place in their story, present but unacknowledged. I turned toward the door. No one stopped me this time. Before leaving, I glanced once more at the sapphire necklace gleaming against Celine's dress. If they needed her to wear my jewels, maybe they feared I still held the crown. I walked out into the cool night, breathing slowly, gently, letting the scent of the sea remind me that truth has tides, it always returns, even after being buried. 3 days passed before the first sign came. It was evening, that gray hour when the city hummed outside my apartment but I could only hear my own breathing. The phone blinked with a new voicemail. No name. Just a number too clean, too official. I pressed play, expecting another client message about a contract. "Good evening, Ms. Veris," a woman's voice said, calm, almost kind. "This is a courtesy call from the Charleston Court Liaison Office. We've received an update regarding your guardianship review. There's concern about your mental readiness to manage financial matters. Please contact us before we proceed further." The tone was polite, but something about the pause between the words tightened my chest. Guardianship review? There was no such thing. I replayed the message. The rhythm of the voice was deliberate, like someone reading from a script. Then I heard it. The small catch at the end of a sentence, the hesitation before the word mental. I knew that voice. Lucan. My cousin. He used to read me bedtime stories when I stayed over after my parents' arguments. His voice would soften when he came to the endings, quietly, gently, like safety itself. Now he'd recorded a lie to make me disappear on paper. I didn't call back. I forwarded the voicemail to my assistant with 2 words, trace origin. By morning, a courier arrived at my office with a thick envelope. The receptionist looked uneasy. "It's marked as confidential court delivery," she said, handing it to me. Inside, a petition for full guardianship. Attached were documents I had never seen before, medical evaluations with my name, my supposed signature, and a diagnosis I didn't recognize. Emotional dysregulation. Delusional attachment to power figures. The words blurred for a moment, sharp and cold. It wasn't just a lie. It was a diagnosis. And in their hands, that made it law. I sat in my office, surrounded by degrees and case files, each one proof that I was capable, rational, competent. I'd built a career defending people from exactly this kind of manipulation. But it hits differently when your own blood forges your instability. I called the clinic listed on the papers. This is attorney Anika Veris. You've issued medical documentation in my name. The nurse hesitated. We can't release patient records without consent. I'm the patient, I said. At least on your paperwork. Another pause. The kind filled with guilt. One moment, she said softly. The line went silent, then clicked dead. My phone rang again an hour later. Unknown number. Drop it, Anika, a man's voice said. Lukens. They're worried about you. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You forged my diagnosis, I said quietly. That's a crime. He sighed. It's not forgery if it's true. Everyone's noticed how unstable you've been. Always fighting, always thinking someone's out to get you. My heart pounded, slow and heavy. And what do they get if I'm declared incompetent, Lucan? He didn't answer. Just a click. Silence again. I closed my eyes and tried to steady my breathing. Slowly. Quietly. Gently. I could hear my grandfather's voice in memory. Truth doesn't defend itself, Anika. You do. I walked to the window overlooking the street below. People hurried home from work, holding coffee cups and grocery bags, unaware that somewhere, a family was rewriting their daughter's sanity into legal fiction. When the doorbell rang that evening, I already knew who it was. The courier handed me another envelope, this one sealed with my mother's handwriting. I didn't need to open it. I'd seen that neat, confident cursive on every document that had ever stripped me of something. I opened it anyway. Inside was a typed letter on legal stationery. Dearest Anika, this intervention is for your own safety. We've seen the strain your work has caused you. The court will ensure your well-being. You'll thank us someday. No signature. Just her initials. VM. The walls felt closer. I sank onto the couch, the paper spilling around me like confetti from a party I never wanted to attend. They were building a case, not in court but in conversation, in every whisper, every polite nod, every "she's just tired" exchanged between friends and colleagues. They were burying me under credibility and charm. I didn't cry. I didn't even curse. I walked to my office mirror and looked at myself under the lamplight. My reflection stared back, eyes steady, jaw set. If I can't trust the system to see me, I whispered, I'll make it see the truth it fears. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was the folder I'd promised myself I would never use, the original trust documents my grandfather left me before the last revision, the one my parents simplified. I ran my hand over the paper, the weight of it grounding me. This wasn't just inheritance. It was proof of intent, his, not theirs. The next day, I called the notary who had witnessed the signing years ago. Do you still have the verification logs from the Veris trust revision? He hesitated. Ms. Veris, those were sealed. The Marcelli's legal team requested confidentiality. Unseal them, I said. That confidentiality was based on fraud. A long pause. Then a quiet reply, I'll see what I can find. That was enough. A thread to pull. By afternoon, I received an email confirmation. The notary had located discrepancies, 2 signatures logged on the same day, both under my name. One genuine. One digitally forged. It was the kind of mistake arrogance makes when it believes you'll never check. I printed the email, folded it, and placed it in my coat pocket like a talisman. That night, my phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Stop digging, Lucan's voice warned. You're not helping yourself. He sounded almost regretful, like the cousin who once fixed my science project when I cried. But that man was gone. I pressed delete and dialed another number, Dr. Kalia Norel. She answered on the second ring. Anika? Her voice carried that steady calm that used to fill the lecture halls. I need you to send me the copy, I said. The one he signed before the last change. A beat of silence. Then she exhaled. I wondered when you'd ask. You still have it? I kept it for the day your family forgot who you are. I guess that day came. For the first time in weeks, something in me unclenched. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet, she said. Once you open this, there's no turning back. They'll come for you harder. I'm counting on it. After I hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at the pile of forged reports, the letters, the lies dressed as concern. Somewhere between anger and exhaustion, a strange calm settled over me. They had rewritten my diagnosis, my reputation, my rights. But I still had one thing left, the truth, waiting quietly in an envelope miles away. As the night deepened, I turned off the lights and watched my reflection fade into the glass, until only the city lights stared back. They were rewriting my identity, I said softly, almost like a prayer. I'm about to revise the entire legacy. The envelope from Dr. Kalia arrived on a Monday morning, wrapped in brown paper and silence. I didn't open it yet. The truth can wait when you know it won't change what's coming. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the Charleston County Family Court, the humidity clinging to my blouse like accusation. The courthouse clock struck 9, each toll vibrating against my ribs. I had represented hundreds of clients in rooms like this. I'd watched them tremble under oaths, seen judges weigh lives as though they were case files. I never imagined I'd be the one standing alone at the defense table. Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and nerves. My heels clicked too loudly as I walked down the aisle. Vera and Horace were already seated with their attorney, a man I once interned under during law school. Celine sat behind them in a soft beige suit, her expression a painting of composure. Lucan avoided my eyes, staring instead at his phone like a coward rehearsing his guilt. When the clerk called our case, I felt every gaze in the room shift toward me. The file on the judge's bench was thick, pages of fabricated concern and false pity. The petition began with 6 words that hollowed me out, based on emotional instability and estrangement. The next line hit harder, risk to herself and others. It was elegant in its cruelty. They weren't asking to take my rights. They were declaring I never earned them. The judge, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, adjusted his glasses. Ms. Veris, he said kindly, we're here for a preliminary review. You understand the nature of this petition? I do, Your Honor. My voice held steady. Though I disagree with its foundation. Vera's lawyer stood. We all love Anika dearly, he began, using that soft tone lawyers reserve for lies. This isn't punitive. It's protective. The family has observed alarming behavior, erratic decisions, delusional attachments to deceased relatives. He didn't need to finish. The word deceased was bait. I saw my mother's faint smile, proud of her performance. When he gestured toward Vera, she clasped her hands, saintly. We've tried so hard to help her. She refuses to listen. Sometimes love requires intervention. The room murmured approval. Love. That word again, dragged through courtrooms and graveyards. I let them speak. Every syllable stacked itself neatly into evidence, of their calculation, of their need to control what they couldn't understand. Then came the witness. The bailiff called Jonah Marcellis to the stand. My brother. The golden boy who'd spent his adulthood living off family money and borrowed morality. He raised his right hand with confidence. I do, he said, the oath rolling off his tongue like a practiced prayer. The lawyer asked, how would you describe your sister's state of mind? Jonah leaned forward, lowering his voice. She's always been detached. Obsessed with being right. Delusional, maybe. Grandfather was just a fantasy crutch for her. She built her identity around being his favorite. Laughter rippled quietly through the gallery, those polite, poisonous chuckles that thrive on scandal. The lawyer nodded sympathetically. Has she ever expressed harmful thoughts? Jonah hesitated just long enough for it to look rehearsed. She said once that maybe it would have been better if she hadn't been born. That was a lie. But then he smiled faintly and added, Mom said she wanted to fix that mistake. The words hit like glass shattering behind my ribs. The judge rapped his gavel once. Mr. Marcellis, he warned, control yourself. Jonah shrugged, unconcerned. I'm only telling the truth. Vera reached out, gently touching his arm. It's all right, sweetheart, she whispered. The gesture was perfect, maternal, staged, a performance for the room. I didn't react. Not outwardly. Rage is loud, dignity is quieter, but it cuts deeper. I took notes as if it were any other case, writing down every lie, every self-righteous sigh. When the judge finally looked at me, I stood slowly, the papers crisp in my hands. Your Honor, I said, may I speak? He nodded. I appreciate my family's creativity. Truly. But this is not an intervention, it's erasure. A convenient way to silence the only person questioning how they've managed my late grandfather's trust. The opposing attorney objected. Irrelevant to the petition. Actually, I said calmly, it's entirely relevant. Because the moment I uncovered discrepancies in the estate, they discovered a sudden concern for my mental health. A ripple of whispers swept the room. Horace shifted uncomfortably. Vera's smile stiffened. I continued, measured and quiet. I have evidence of falsified medical evaluations and a fabricated legal call from someone impersonating a court liaison. I've submitted those to the bar for verification. The judge's eyes flickered with something close to recognition. He knew the pattern. Families disguising greed as guardianship. Do you have documentation? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, I said, sliding a folder across. And while we're addressing mental fitness, I'm filing a counterpetition. The attorney blinked. A what? A petition to reclaim trust mismanagement and emotional exploitation, I said clearly. The courtroom froze. Someone dropped a pen. Even the clerk looked up from her keyboard. I'm not here to defend my sanity, I continued. I'm here to reclaim my rights. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the judge cleared his throat. I'll admit both filings into record. We'll set a hearing. Vera finally broke her silence. Anika, please, she whispered, her voice soft enough for only me to hear. You're embarrassing yourself. I met her gaze. No, Mother. I'm documenting myself. Her eyes widened, but I didn't wait for a reply. As the bailiff gathered the exhibits, Jonah leaned toward me, muttering, You've lost it. You think this makes you brave? It makes you pathetic. I turned my head slightly, my voice low and even. You should choose your words carefully, Jonah. Lies tend to echo in rooms like this. He smirked, but I saw his fingers tremble against the table. The judge adjourned the session. People began to stand, papers rustling, heels scraping tile. I remained seated until they'd all moved past me. When I rose, I could feel their eyes burning holes in my back, anger, disbelief, fear. The kind of fear that only appears when people realize their version of the truth isn't the only one that exists. I gathered my folder, smoothed its edges, and turned toward the exit. But before leaving, I paused beside Vera's chair. She kept her gaze forward, pretending not to notice. You taught me not to fight, I said quietly, just loud enough for the room to hear. Now you'll learn what happens when I stop apologizing. Her breath caught, a subtle tremor. Celine shifted uncomfortably. Lucan lowered his head. The door to the courtroom swung open as I walked through. Outside, the sun was bright, unflinching. The war wasn't declared with screams. It was delivered on letterhead. 2 days after court, Charleston felt quieter. Even the air moved slower, like the city was waiting to see what I would do next. I didn't sleep much. The legal noise inside my head never stopped, paragraphs, clauses, lies turned into documentation. Still, I drove across town to see Dr. Kalia. Her home sat near the water, an old brick townhouse wrapped in ivy. The kind of place where secrets could live safely. When she opened the door, her smile carried both pride and sorrow. You look tired, she said gently. I am, I admitted. She stepped aside. Come in, Anika. I think it's time you saw what I've kept. The study smelled like old books and tea. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in just enough light to find dust hanging midair, each particle a memory, suspended. Kalia walked to a mahogany cabinet and unlocked a drawer with a small brass key. The sound of it opening echoed through the quiet room. Inside was a wooden box, dark oak, worn smooth from years of being touched but never opened. She placed it on the table, then looked at me. Your grandfather trusted me with this before he died. He said, if they silence me, she'll still know how to speak. I felt my throat tighten. He knew they'd try. She nodded. He suspected. Families like yours, Anika, they confuse legacy with ownership. Her fingers hesitated on the latch, then she opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a hard drive and a folded letter written in his slanted handwriting. The smell of ink and cedar filled the air. I unfolded the note slowly. The first line hit like a pulse, if this reaches you, they've buried more than me. My hands trembled as I read the rest. You have a voice stronger than their inheritance. Don't use it to hurt them. Use it to remember who you are. Love doesn't protect lies, it reveals them. Kalia connected the hard drive to her laptop. A moment later, the screen came alive with my grandfather's face, older, thinner than I remembered, but eyes still clear, still sharp. He sat in the sunroom, voice unsteady but sure. "I want Anika to have everything," he said. "Not because of blood, but because she earned it when no one else was looking." He paused to cough, then smiled faintly. "If they tell you I changed my mind, don't believe it. I changed the paperwork, not my heart." I pressed my hand to my mouth. The sound that left me wasn't a cry, it was a release. Kalia reached over, touching my wrist lightly. "He made 2 wills, Anika. One they signed for him, one he signed for himself." She handed me the folder. 2 versions. One typed, perfect, black ink, their version. The other blue ink, signed in the uneven stroke I'd recognize anywhere. I lined them up on the desk, side by side. The blue ink bled slightly through the page, human and real. The black ink looked mechanical, soulless. "The pen marks don't lie," I said softly. Kalia smiled sadly. "No, they don't. One was written in love. The other in fear disguised as legal formality." I stared at the documents until the lines blurred. They hadn't just replaced the paperwork. They had rewritten the person who wrote it. "They didn't bury evidence," I murmured. "They buried him." Kalia closed the laptop. "What will you do now?" "I'll send them the truth," I said. "No threats. No speeches." That night, I scanned everything, the video, the letter, the 2 wills. Then I wrote an email. To legalcounsel@verasfirm.com. Cici, vera.marcellis@verasfamilytrust.org. Subject, evidence submission. Attachment, he chose me, full statement.mp4. I didn't include a single word in the body of the email. Sometimes silence is louder than explanation. When I pressed send, my chest felt lighter. It wasn't revenge, it was recovery. I poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen counter, and waited. The city outside murmured softly, cars in the distance, the steady hum of life going on as if nothing had changed. My phone vibrated an hour later. "Incoming call, Mom." I answered but said nothing. For a few seconds, there was only breathing on the other end. Then her voice, steady, too steady. "Where did you get this?" I let the video play through my computer speakers. My grandfather's voice filled the apartment. "I want Anika to have everything. Because she earned it when no one else was looking." Vera's breath hitched. "Turn it off." I stayed silent. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" she snapped. "You're destroying this family's name." "He built the name," I said quietly. "You just borrowed it." "You don't understand what this means," she said, voice trembling now. "We did what we had to." He was sick, confused. "No, interrupta softly." He was clear. "You forged him into something you could manage." She inhaled sharply. "You ungrateful." But the sound of my grandfather's voice cut through her rage again. "Love doesn't protect lies, it reveals them." She didn't hang up. The silence between us stretched, heavy, like a confession that refused to be spoken. When the video ended, I heard only her breathing. "Mom," I said finally, my tone calm, steady, almost gentle. "For once, don't speak. Just listen." The line stayed open. Then she whispered, "Anika, please. We can fix this. Just take the video down." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "There's only truth." I could hear her composure slipping. "You think this will bring him back? You think this makes you righteous?" "No," I said softly. "It makes me free." I ended the call. For a long moment, I sat there in the quiet, listening to the faint echo of his recorded words. The air felt different, lighter, but lonelier too. Vindication doesn't come with applause. It comes with the sound of someone else's certainty cracking. Outside, the sky was shifting from dusk to night. I walked to the window, opened it slightly, and let the air in. It smelled of salt and change. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. It happened softly, step by step. 1 week after I sent the video and the will, I returned to the same courtroom, but I didn't sit in the same place. That morning, I chose a suit with clean lines and no softness, a pale gray that made no promises. I gathered my notes, the originals, the affidavits, the handwriting analysis, and the hard drive, each page a wound, each clip a scar. The courthouse smelled of polish and anxiety. I entered through the same doors where they tried to erase me. But this time, I didn't flinch. They were already there, Vera in her signature navy, Horace beside her, arms folded like a man who knew the outcome was slipping away. Celine sat behind them, her posture perfect, her face a sculpted blank. Lucan was nowhere to be seen. As I stepped down the aisle, I heard it, soft, unmistakable laughter. My mother's laugh, paired with Horace's low chuckle, as if I'd just walked in wearing clown shoes. Their lawyer leaned in, and I caught the edge of a whisper, "She really thinks this will work?" Once, that sound would have cracked me. Now, it sharpened me. I didn't sit. I stood at the petitioner's table, fingers resting lightly on the documents, not gripping, just claiming. The bailiff called the hearing to order. The judge, same one as before, looked tired but curious. "We are reconvened in the matter of Verus versus Marcelli's estate, and the counterfiling for trust manipulation and document tampering. Ms. Verus, are you prepared to proceed?" "I am, Your Honor." My voice didn't tremble. Vera leaned forward, all composed charm. "Your Honor, if I may." "You may not," the judge interrupted flatly. "Counselor Verus, proceed." I presented the will first, the blue ink original, signed and notarized, dated 6 months before the alleged revision. Then I presented the video, my grandfather's clear testimony, his own words, his intention. There was no theatrics. Just the quiet sound of truth. The judge watched the clip without expression. When it ended, he asked for the forged will. Horace shifted. "That document was interpreted through legal counsel at the time. The signature was duplicated," I said evenly. "By Lucan Reese, who no longer represents this trust." The courtroom shifted. Not gasps. But a slow, growing awareness. The judge held both documents side by side. "The handwriting analysis has been submitted?" "Yes, Your Honor. Verified by an independent examiner." I handed over the report. He read silently. Then looked up at Vera. "Mrs. Marcellis, do you wish to respond to the accusation of document tampering and guardianship manipulation?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Not one. Behind me, I heard someone enter the courtroom. The door clicked softly. I turned, heart stopping for a beat. It was her, Clara Jennings. My former student. Once a shy, unsure young woman who barely looked people in the eye. Now, she stood tall, in a navy pantsuit, her state bar pin gleaming under the lights. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Jennings?" "I request to testify as a character witness," she said. "Granted," the judge replied. She approached the stand. "Calm. Steady. State your name and relation to the petitioner." "Clara Jennings. I was a law student under Ms. Verus. She mentored me for 2 years." "And your statement?" She looked directly at Vera, then Horace. "Anika Verus taught me how to speak when silence felt safer. She gave me my voice. She taught me that law isn't about power, it's about protection. She never once spoke of this inheritance. All she ever asked of me was to keep going, even when I didn't believe I could." I felt something shift in my chest. Not pride. Not gratitude. Just quiet recognition. A soft restoration. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Jennings." Vera's face was pale. Horace's jaw tightened. The judge turned to me again. "Counselor Verus, your rebuttal?" "There's nothing to rebut," I said. "Just correction." The room stilled. The judge leaned back. "In light of the submitted evidence, the video statement, and character testimony, this court hereby dismisses the guardianship petition." Celine looked away. Horace didn't move. "And," the judge continued, "a formal review of the Marcellis trust and associated documents will proceed under court oversight. You will receive notice within 14 days. I nodded once. He looked down, tapped the gavel. Adjourned. The courtroom didn't erupt. There was no applause. Just chairs sliding, papers gathering, heels tapping tile. As I collected my folder, I heard Celine murmur to Vera, "What do we do now?" Vera whispered back, "We wait. She'll make a mistake." I stood. Walked past them without pause. But as I passed, I said softly, "You waited too long already." Outside, the air was thick with late summer, the courthouse steps warm under my shoes. Clara caught up to me. "You didn't know I'd come." "No," I said. "But I'm glad you did." She smiled. "You saved me once. Just returning the favor." Her kindness settled gently in my chest. They didn't know it yet, but their version of the truth had just expired. 2 weeks after the hearing, the courtroom didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a stage that had been scrubbed clean, waiting for the final act. I arrived early, papers tucked under my arm, heels clicking against marble that had heard too many verdicts and not enough truth. When the bailiff opened the doors, I walked to my table and set everything down in neat order: the blue ink will, the handwriting analysis, the notarized log, the affidavit from Lucan, and the letter from my grandfather. I placed my hands flat on the table. My heart beat evenly. They came in late, as always, Vera first, chin high, Horace behind her, moving slower now, Celine trailing like an echo. Their attorney carried a briefcase that looked heavier than conscience. As the judge entered, everyone stood. The same man who once questioned my competence now adjusted his glasses and said my name differently. "Attorney Veras," he began, "you may proceed." It landed like a bell. The title wasn't just professional, it was reclamation. The same courtroom that had been their theater of mockery was now still. I rose slowly, holding my file. "Your Honor, I'm here to present the countersuit filed under Civil Code 4-27, document tampering, defamation of mental fitness, and intentional emotional distress." The words didn't tremble. They landed like stone. Vera's lawyer shifted in his seat, his smirk fading. Horace muttered something I couldn't hear. Celine crossed her arms, eyes darting toward the gallery, where reporters whispered into recorders. I continued, unfolding the documents with deliberate calm. Exhibit A, the authentic will, dated and notarized 6 months before the revision. Exhibit B, the forged document, filed through counsel without proper verification. Exhibit C, expert analysis confirming 2 separate signatures, one genuine, one fabricated using tracing overlay. Exhibit D, statement from Lucan Reese admitting impersonation of legal liaison and unauthorized access to protected estate files. The judge gestured for the clerk to collect the evidence. "Proceed." I walked to the projection screen. A slide appeared showing both signatures side by side, blue ink against black. Every pen stroke visible. "The difference," I said, "isn't subtle. It's human. You can't counterfeit pressure, hesitation, or warmth." I turned slightly toward the gallery. They erased my name from the will, the funeral, and every family photograph. But they couldn't erase this. Ink tells the truth. The judge nodded. "Continue." I brought up the video file. My grandfather's voice filled the room again. "I want Anika to have everything, because she earned it when no one else was looking." No one breathed. Vera stared straight ahead, jaw rigid. Horace's hand clenched on the armrest. Celine looked down, her perfect facade cracking for the first time. When the clip ended, the judge leaned back. "Defense, you may respond." Vera's attorney stood. "Your Honor, while we don't deny the authenticity of these materials, the context remains unclear. The family acted out of concern for Ms. Veras's mental health. There was never intent to harm." "Concern?" I repeated softly. "They filed a petition to strip my rights, fabricated medical records, and forged a will. That's not concern. That's control wearing perfume." The courtroom murmured. The judge raised a hand for silence. Horace stood abruptly. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge's gavel struck once. "You've had your turn, Mr. Marcellis. Sit down." For once, he obeyed. I returned to my table, pulled out one final folder. Exhibit E, documentation of previous rulings made by Judge Horace Marcellis involving elder trusts and familial claims. A review shows 3 similar cases dismissed under questionable procedure. His influence extended beyond this family. A gasp rippled through the spectators. Vera turned to him, voice trembling with fury. "You told me it was handled." He didn't answer. His silence was louder than any admission. The judge's expression hardened. "This court will forward these findings to the State Bar for evaluation. We'll recess for 10 minutes. As the room stirred, I sat quietly, folding my hands. In the row behind me, a reporter whispered, "She's dismantling them piece by piece." When we reconvened, Vera's reputation unraveled in real time. The list of community donations she'd orchestrated through the trust. The way she'd shifted assets into personal accounts under event sponsorships. Horace's network of legal favors, the social clubs that protected him. It all came out, neat as ribbons being untied. Celine stood abruptly, whispering, "I can't do this," and left the room. Lucan, pale and sweating, stepped forward from the gallery and handed the judge a written statement. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "I need to set the record straight." He admitted everything. The impersonated call, the forged signature, the hush money. When he finished, the judge thanked him curtly and added his statement to the record. It was over. The judge cleared his throat. In the matter of Veris versus Marcellis, the court finds in favor of the petitioner, attorney Anika Veris. Vera flinched at the word. Attorney. The original will is reinstated, the judge continued. The trust shall be executed as written by the deceased, with Ms. Veris as sole executor. Mr. and Mrs. Marcellis are hereby barred from future involvement in estate administration or fiduciary decision-making. A quiet sigh escaped me, not triumph, just release. The judge lowered his voice. This court is adjourned. He struck the gavel once. For a moment, no one moved. The sound of the gavel still hung in the air like the end of a prayer. I turned to face them, my parents, who had spent years perfecting the art of pretending. "This was never about money," I said softly. "It was about not letting you write the ending for me." Vera's lips parted, but no words came out. Horace looked away. Outside, the crowd of reporters surged. Microphones flashed like lightning. Someone shouted, "How does it feel to win, Ms. Veris?" I stopped on the courthouse steps, sunlight catching the edge of my file. "It feels accurate," I said quietly. "You can cut me out of your story, but you can't erase my signature from the law." The words carried in the breeze. Gentle, certain. Behind me, I could hear their voices rising, questions, accusations, disbelief, but they no longer touched me. I walked toward the street, the air warm and clear. Winning wasn't the end. Choosing what to do with power, that was the beginning. 3 months passed before I stood on a stage again. This time, it wasn't in a courtroom, it was in a lecture hall at the university, the same one where I once gave my first guest lecture, nervously clutching note cards and hoping I wouldn't stumble over my own truth. Today, there were no note cards. Just a small podium, a microphone that didn't quite work right, and rows of students, faculty, and a few members of the press scattered in the back. I wore a charcoal suit. Not to look powerful, but because it felt like armor I'd earned. No one clapped when I stepped forward, and I didn't need them to. In the front row sat Dr. Kalia, hands folded in her lap, eyes soft with quiet knowing. Celine wasn't there. Neither was Vera. Horace, I'd heard, had declined the invitation. But Lucan stood in the shadow of the side door, just far enough not to be seen unless you knew where to look. I took a breath and began. This fellowship isn't about legacy in the traditional sense. It's not about bloodlines, family names, or who gets written into what will. The microphone crackled. I paused, smiled, and continued. It's for students who've been silenced. For those who were told their voices were too sharp, too loud, too inconvenient. This is for anyone who's ever been called unstable when they were simply unwilling to be controlled. The room held its breath. This isn't about erasing the past. It's about planting something where they left nothing. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. 3 months ago, I reclaimed the rights that were taken from me. But today, I give something away, freely. Because real inheritance isn't passed through blood. It's passed through courage. I spoke my grandfather's name once, just once. With reverence. No pain, no grief. Only respect. When I stepped down, there was no ovation. Just stillness, respectful and kind. And that was enough. Later, in a quiet moment near the reception, a student approached me. She was maybe 19, wearing a faded backpack and an oversized blazer. Her voice shook. "Ms. Veris," she said, "I got the scholarship." I smiled. "What's your name?" "Kiara." She hesitated, then whispered, I'm going to be okay." I pulled her into a gentle hug. Held her. Then let her go. On my way out, the breeze picked up, tugging softly at my sleeve. I looked up and saw the flags on the campus pole shift direction, as if the air had changed its mind. Healing doesn't come with milestones. It arrives quietly, like a chair finally offered after years of standing. Vera was spotted recently at the grocery store, alone in the parking lot. Someone I knew said she looked smaller. Not thinner, just reduced. Like she was carrying a silence too heavy to speak through. Horace received a letter from the judiciary 2 weeks ago. An inquiry into his past rulings. They're asking questions now, the kind he used to dodge with a handshake and a brandy. Lucan went back to his small firm. No longer invited to Marcelli's events, no longer a whisper behind my name. He sent me a note once. No apology. Just 2 words, you won. Celine moved out west. A few days ago, I stumbled across one of her public posts. A photo of a sunrise, captioned, "Rebuilding starts with walking away." Maybe that was her beginning. That evening, I returned to my apartment and pulled out the shadow box I had been quietly curating. Inside it, the sapphire necklace. The one that was mine, then wasn't, then was again, not through possession, but through memory. I pinned it in the center. Above it, a handwritten label, things they tried to rewrite. The ring. The envelope they returned unopened. A photo of my grandfather, holding my hand at age 10. His smile was real. Theirs never quite measured up. I closed the box and placed it on the shelf. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just where it belonged. They lost their control over my story. I gained something they'll never reclaim, peace. The kind that doesn't need an audience. Healing doesn't mean you forget the pain. It means you no longer let the wound speak louder than your voice. As the final gavel fell, I realized something: winning wasn't the end. It was the beginning of reclaiming everything I thought I lost, but in a way that they'd never understand. Life isn't about revenge. It's about finding peace in the truth, even when the world tries to bury it. You can erase someone from the story you tell, but you can't erase their voice from the truth. What does it take for you to stop apologizing and start living your truth? Let me know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of strength, justice, and redemption. Stay tuned for what's coming next.